Jack Lemmon said 7 words. Johnny Carson's voice disappeared. He put down his microphone and had to stand up from his desk because those 7 words changed everything. The Tonight Show starring Johnny Carson. Studio 6B at NBC in Burbank, California. March 1982. Another Thursday night taping. Another packed audience expecting laughs and celebrity banter, and Johnny's signature monologue wit. Jack Lemmon was the guest. Not his first time on the show. He'd been on dozens of times over the years. Always charming. Always funny. The chemistry between him and Johnny was effortless, the kind that comes from genuine friendship built over 2 decades in Hollywood. Tonight was supposed to be standard late-night television. Jack was promoting his latest film. They'd share some stories, maybe a funny anecdote from the set, talk about his co-stars. The audience would laugh. The band would play. America would go to bed entertained. But sometimes, late-night television becomes something else entirely. Johnny was in the middle of asking Jack about working with a particular director when he noticed something. A slight change in Jack's expression. A hesitation. The actor's eyes had drifted past Johnny, toward the studio audience, then back again. "Jack?" Johnny prompted gently. "You okay?" Jack Lemmon took a breath. "Johnny, can I tell you something? Something I've never said on television before?" The studio shifted. You could feel it, that collective sensing that the script was about to be abandoned, that something real was about to happen. Johnny leaned back slightly in his chair, his interviewer instincts kicking in. "Of course. Whatever you want to say." Jack leaned forward, elbows on his knees, his hands clasped together. The jovial actor persona had vanished. This was just a man who needed to speak a truth. "Do you remember 1954? Jack asked quietly. Johnny's brow furrowed. "Sure. I was still in Nebraska then, doing radio. I was 29 years old." Jack continued. "Just starting out in New York. Trying to make it as an actor. Living in a tiny apartment with 3 other guys, eating once a day if we were lucky, going to every audition we could find." The studio was completely silent now. This wasn't the planned interview. This was something else. Cameras were live when Jack Lemmon said something, just 7 words, and Johnny Carson had to put down his microphone and stand up from his desk because those words changed everything. Jack's voice was steady but thick with emotion. "I had a son that year. Christopher. Born February 1954. Most beautiful thing I'd ever seen. His mother was a woman I'd been dating. We weren't married. We were both too young, too broke, too scared. But when Christopher was born..." He paused, composing himself. "I loved him from the first second I saw him." Johnny sat completely still, his usual restless energy gone. Ed McMahon, visible in Johnny's peripheral vision, had stopped smiling. "His mother and I tried to make it work," Jack continued, "for about 8 months. But we were kids ourselves. I was gone constantly, auditions, trying to get any work I could. She was exhausted, alone with a baby in a 4th-floor walk-up with no heat. We were drowning." Jack looked directly at Johnny now. "In November 1954, we made a decision. Her sister and brother-in-law couldn't have children. They had a house in Connecticut, stable jobs, everything we didn't have. And they loved Christopher. So we let them adopt him." The audience gasped quietly. This wasn't entertainment gossip. This was confession. "The agreement was that I could see him sometimes," Jack said, his voice cracking now. "Birthday visits. Holidays. But always as Uncle Jack. Never as his father. He was told his parents couldn't keep him, that his aunt and uncle adopted him and became his mom and dad. He grew up happy. Safe. Loved. Everything we wanted for him." Johnny's hand moved to his desk, gripping the edge. His face had gone very still. "For 20 years. Jack continued. "I've kept that promise. I've seen my son grow up from a distance. I've watched him graduate high school, go to college, get married. I've helped my grandchildren and they have no idea who I really am." He took a shaky breath. "Christopher turned 28 last month. He's a teacher now. Lives in Vermont. Has 2 beautiful kids. And last week, his mother, my ex, the woman I haven't spoken to in decades, she called me." Jack pulled a folded piece of paper from his jacket pocket. His hands were trembling. "She's dying, Johnny. Cancer. Stage 4. Maybe 3 months. And she said—" He had to stop, compose himself. "She said she wants to tell Christopher the truth before she dies. She wants him to know who his biological parents are. She wants to give him the choice to meet me. Really meet me. Not as Uncle Jack. As his father." The paper in Jack's hands was a letter. Johnny could see that now. Handwritten. Worn at the edges like it had been read many times. "She sent me this letter," Jack said, holding it up slightly. "Asking if I would be willing. If I would meet him. If I would tell him the truth." Jack looked at Johnny with tears streaming down his face. "And Johnny, I'm terrified. What if he hates me? What if he feels abandoned? What if I ruin his life by telling him that the man he thought was his father wasn't, that I gave him away, that I've been lying to him for 28 years? The studio was absolutely silent. 300 people holding their breath. The cameras kept rolling because no one in the control room knew what else to do. Johnny Carson sat behind his desk, his hands now both gripping its edge, his jaw tight. Jack Lemmon was crying openly, not even trying to hide it. And then Jack leaned forward even further, close enough that the microphones barely caught it, and said 7 words that would echo through television history. "Johnny, what would you tell your son?" Subscribe and leave a comment, because the most powerful part of this story is still ahead. The question hung in the air like a physical weight. Johnny Carson's entire body went rigid. His face, usually so controlled, so perfectly calibrated for television, crumpled. His hand moved to his microphone and pushed it aside. He stood up from his desk, something he almost never did during an interview unless it was part of a planned bit. This wasn't a bit. Ed McMahon started to speak. "Johnny?" But stopped when he saw his friend's face. Johnny walked around his desk, past the cameras, and sat down in the guest chair beside Jack Lemmon. Not across from him. Beside him. 2 friends, not host and guest. The control room was in chaos. Director Bobby Quinn was speaking frantically into his headset. "Do we cut? Do we go to commercial? What's happening?" Producer Fred de Cordova watched the monitors, tears on his cheeks. "Keep rolling," he said quietly. "Just keep rolling." Johnny sat beside Jack for a long moment, either of them speaking. The studio audience could see Johnny's shoulders shaking slightly. He was crying. Finally, Johnny spoke, his voice rough. "Jack, I need to tell you something. Something I've never told anyone publicly." Jack looked at him, surprised. "Johnny, you don't have to. My father and I didn't speak for the last 12 years of his life." Johnny interrupted, his voice steady now but thick with pain. "We had a fight in 1970. Something stupid about money, about my career, about choices I'd made. And I was stubborn. He was stubborn. Neither of us would apologize." Johnny looked at his hands. "He died in 1983. Just a few months ago. And I never got to fix it. I never got to tell him I was sorry. I never got to tell him that I loved him, that I understood why he said the things he said, that I wished we could start over." He looked at Jack directly. "If I could have one more conversation with my father, one more chance to be honest, to be real, to tell him the truth, I would take it in a heartbeat. And I would tell him everything. Every regret. Every moment I missed. Every time I chose pride over love." Johnny's voice broke. "Jack, your son is alive. You have the chance I'll never have. And if you walk away from it because you're scared, you'll spend the rest of your life wondering what if." Jack was sobbing now, not quietly, not controlled. Full, body-shaking sobs. Backstage, Johnny made a choice no producer would have ever allowed. Johnny reached over and took the letter from Jack's hand. The letter from Christopher's mother. He looked at it for a long moment. "May I read this?" Johnny asked. Jack nodded, unable to speak. Johnny unfolded the paper. The camera zoomed in slightly, though they couldn't capture the handwriting clearly. Johnny read silently for perhaps 30 seconds. Then he folded it again carefully. "Jack," Johnny said quietly, "this woman, Christopher's mother, she's not asking you to disrupt his life. She's offering you a gift. She's giving you permission to be honest after 20 years. And she's giving Christopher the truth about where he came from." Johnny stood up and walked back to his desk. He pulled open the top drawer, the one where he kept his cue cards, his pens, personal items he needed during the show. He took out something small. A business card. He walked back to Jack and handed it to him. "This is my personal number," Johnny said. "Not the show's number. Mine. When you call Christopher, and you are going to call him Jack. If you need to talk before, during, or after, you call me. Anytime. Day or night. You're not doing this alone." Jack took the card with trembling hands. "Johnny, I don't know what to say." "Don't say anything," Johnny replied. "Just make the call. Your son deserves to know his father. And you deserve to stop carrying this alone." But this was the moment no one in the studio, nor anyone at home, ever saw coming. Johnny looked at camera one. He addressed the audience at home directly, breaking every rule of television hosting. "Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize that this show isn't what you expected tonight. You tuned in for jokes and Jack Lemmon telling funny stories about Hollywood. Instead, you're watching two men talk about fathers and sons and regret and second chances." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "But I think maybe this is more important than jokes. I think maybe some of you watching have your own phone calls you need to make. Your own letters you need to write. Your own truths you've been too scared to speak." Johnny looked back at Jack, who was wiping his face with a handkerchief Ed had passed him. "Life is short," Johnny said simply. "Make the call." The audience erupted. Standing ovation. Not the excited applause of entertainment, but the solemn, reverent applause of people who have witnessed something true. Jack Lemmon stood, and Johnny embraced him, a long, genuine hug between friends. The show went to commercial. During the break, producers scrambled to figure out what to do with the rest of the episode. Johnny made a decision. "We're done," he told them. "That's the show. We're not doing any other segments. That's what America needs to see tonight." They'd never done that before. They had scheduled sketches, a musical guest, a planned closing monologue. But Johnny overruled everyone. When they came back from commercial, Johnny simply thanked the audience and said goodnight. The show ended 20 minutes early. The NBC's switchboard lit up immediately. Thousands of calls from people crying, sharing their own stories about estranged parents, lost children, unspoken truths. Jack Lemmon called Christopher 3 days later. They met 2 weeks after that in a quiet restaurant in Vermont. Christopher cried. Jack cried. They talked for 6 hours. Christopher's mother died 7 weeks later, knowing her son had met his biological father. Jack held her hand in the hospital and thanked her for giving him back his son. Share and subscribe. Make sure this story is never forgotten. Johnny Carson kept Jack's letter in his desk drawer until his final show in 1992. He never mentioned it again publicly, but colleagues said he would occasionally pull it out and read it when the studio was empty. The business card Johnny gave Jack became more than a phone number. It became a symbol. Christopher Lemmon, who learned the truth that spring, keeps it framed in his office today alongside a photo of his father and Johnny Carson embracing on that stage. Jack and Christopher remained close until Jack's death in 2001. At the funeral, Christopher gave the eulogy. He thanked his father for finding the courage to tell the truth. He thanked Johnny Carson for giving him that courage. Those 7 words. Johnny, what would you tell your son? Change two families forever.